You're listening to the Prospect Blueprint, exclusively on twoadays.com, the #1 source for college coach reviews and ratings, as well as recruiting tips and resources for college athletes. Have a coach you'd like to leave a review for or research before you make an expensive decision? Only at twoadays.com. Hello and welcome to the Prospect Blueprint. I'm Kelly Kleiman, and my battery mate, as always, is Mr. Rick Dempsey, 24-year MLB vet and fan favorite with the Twins, Yankees, Orioles, Brewers, and Dodgers. And I love saying this, the 1983 World Series MVP for the Baltimore Orioles. Hi, Rick. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Anxious for this little interview today with Steve. He's a local homeboy, so we've got to find out what's going on in our own neighborhood.
Our guest tonight is Steve Henson. Steve has coached youth baseball for more than 40 years, mostly teams of high school-aged players. He is a CIF umpire with the Channel Coast Association, and his full-time job is assistant sports editor at the LA Times. Steve has also been a sports editor and reporter at Yahoo and USA Today, in addition to spending 26 years at the Times. That's the LA Times. He currently coaches the Ventura County Baseball Academy, affectionately known as VCBA, and Dustin Tubb is his co-founder. They are recognized as one of the elite travel programs in beautiful Southern California, and that's been going on for nearly a decade. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Rick. Good to be on with you guys.
Pleasure.
Yeah, well, you know, Kel told me, Steve, that you're an umpire, and there seems to be quite a shortage in the amateurs right now of umpires. How, in your mind, have things changed where people now don't want to assume those roles? And is one of the reasons why, is it the parents and how nasty they may have become? They've kind of devolved a little bit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that there aren't enough younger umpires coming up through the ranks. The average age in our association, we ump all the high school games from Calabasas to Santa Barbara to Goleta. So it's a pretty large area. And so, one day I'm in Agora, one day I'm in Oxnard, then I'm in Ventura or Moore Park, and then I'm in Carpinteria, Malibu High School, you name it, any high school between Calabasas and Goleta, and our association's small enough that we umpire almost every day during the spring. Parents, I think, have always been kind of about the same. Parents, by and large, are not a problem at least at the games I umpire. They're universally respectful. Occasionally, you'll get somebody that's popping off, and you're going to have to deal with that. Certain coaches will test you. They'll come out and ask you about something. Some coaches will come out and say, "Hey, I know you got the call right, but I have to come out here to back up my player, so I'm just out here to say hello." And then they turn around and go back to the dugout. Nobody even knows they just said that. I think since COVID, there's actually been a little bit more respect, and I think it's because the players and the coaches and even the parents don't take the game for granted as much as they may have before COVID. Everything was pulled, the plug was pulled, everything was taken away from them for a year and a half. And when they came back, I think everybody was just appreciative of being out there on the ball field, and there was a better sense of community. Of course, as you get toward the playoffs, and once you get into the playoffs, it gets ultra competitive. A couple of leagues that we umpire are definitely highly competitive. The Mermani League in particular, because the teams are really good and well coached, and they're very even. There's a lot. The teams are, they beat each other up all season long. So I don't think the parents necessarily have been worse, at least from, you'll see something on Twitter, you'll see a video clip of somebody cold cocking an umpire, or, some brutal thing that goes on, and that goes viral. And so it does happen, but I haven't experienced it.
As one of the coaches of Ventura baseball, do you do your scouting from behind home plate at some of these high schools, or is it kind of an unwritten rule that you don't do that sort of thing at that time?
Oh, you mean when I'm umpiring, am I looking for players that might end up
Yeah,
playing
kind
for me
of.
this summer? You do evaluate players, especially pitchers. When you're umpiring behind the plate, you get a sense of a pitcher's command, and you can really see the movement on what he's throwing way better than from the stands or the dugout. And so you definitely start to evaluate, and with hitters too, you can kind of get a sense for a guy who's really confident at the plate, who has a good approach, and he's walking up there and he's ready for the first pitch. And other guys, they almost just exude insecurity, and there you can tell that they're just not as confident. But by and large, our players come from word of mouth, and the program's at a point where it sort of recruits itself. And I haven't. I mean, there's been a couple instances where I've said, I've called my coach that I coach with, Dustin, and after a game I umpire, and I'll go, hey, there was this guy kid playing for so and so high school, and he'd be really fun to add for the summer. But we almost never follow through with that because our roster's pretty full. But that was a good question, because I do evaluate guys when I'm umpiring, definitely.
Okay.
It's my turn. And I was there at the beginning, but I'm going to have it come out of your mouth, the horse's mouth, of course. Tell us about the evolution of VCBA. When did it start, and which age group did you focus on, and which group did you end up on now? Because it seems like it's kids who it looks like it's all high school ages, actually. Is it 9 through 12?
Well, it started, as you're saying, Kelly, with the group that included Casey and Cato, your twin sons that are wonderful young men and excellent baseball players, and still to this day are very dedicated to the game, and very dedicated to VCBA. They're fantastic alums. And you would have to remind me what year that might have been, when they were about in eighth grade, because I think that's
Yeah.
when it kind of got going, when they were in seventh and eighth grade. And we had and Dustin asked me to 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 help and to come aboard as the third base coach, and kind of be in charge of the offense. And Dustin's primarily a pitching coach, and an excellent one. And that team was just blessed with talent, and it was already in place. Dustin had a culture of kids working hard. One thing about VCBA that was always true was the kids practice a lot. We would have those kids out at Newbury Park High School at least 3 nights a week, during weekdays, and then be playing all weekend. And you get better at practice. The games are awesome. The games are fun. The tournaments are super fun. And you start playing the best competition you can possibly find. That's important, and that's easy to find in Southern California. But those practices, those workouts, and ending up with those kids running poles when they barely had been on the 60-90 field for more than a couple of months, and they're already running foul pole to foul pole after practice. I think that was really the key, and to kind of creating the culture of, this is a hardworking team, and you're going to get better every day you come out to practice. And then the games, and I always looked at it as practice as kind of my time to really do the teaching, and to be very verbal. And then the games are the players' time, and if you watch the way we coach during games, I kind of sit back and let the kids play. I mean, we run a lot, and when I'm coaching third, we're stealing a lot, and we'll safety squeeze a lot. We'll do all that kind of stuff. But overall, once the game starts, it's all positive. I don't say anything negative to anybody, because the kids, they deserve that at that point. They deserve to be able to just play the game sort of freely without worrying about somebody looking over their shoulder.
What does your schedule look like, and how do you pick the tournaments that you do pick? Which tournaments are the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak, in terms of exposure?
Well, yeah, now at this point, our team is it's almost exclusively 2024 graduates. So this will be the summer between their junior and senior year of high school, and a few of them already are college commits, and but a lot of them aren't, and they do want to play at the next level. And so a big goal during the summer is to go to tournaments and play in situations where college coaches come and watch, and they do come and watch us. College coaches, the job one for them is to see arms, and so if we've got a guy throwing mid 80s or above on a given day, we spread the word, and a lot of guys come out. And then while they're out there watching that arm, only one guy's going to get that arm, but you can see everybody around the horn. They can evaluate the catcher, the defense up the middle. Do the guys at the corners have some pop, and do they turn outfielders around? Who can they project? Who can play at the next level? And I tell our kids that these college coaches, when they're evaluating, they're evaluating who do they want to invite into their family. Their team is their family. Who's going to fit into their culture, and also who's going to help them keep their job for the next 3 or 4 years.
Right, that's the key.
You want to be somebody that hustles on and off, that has great body language, in addition to establishing that you have some tools that are gonna translate to the next level.
Yeah, well put.
Stephen, I'd love to hear when you talk about, players that are running. Baseball is such a tough sport because there's so many games in everybody's league and season, and you've got to be in really great shape. But one of the questions, how do you recruit these players? And I know you utilize Newbury Park, so the VCBA, is that a feeder program for Newbury Park? And how do you always end up with such good ball clubs and outstanding talent?
Well, 5 years ago, we had a tryout at Newbury Park High School for kids coming back from Cooperstown in their 12-year-old summer. And they were all going to make that move to 13U, which is you're going to make the move to a regulation baseball field sooner than later, very soon. And you're coming off of playing at 70-foot bases and a 50-foot pitcher's mound at Bronco, or even smaller at Little League. And we had a tryout at Newbury Park High School 5 years ago, and the talent that came out was unbelievable. There's a lot of those travel teams that blow up after the kids are 12 because, for one thing, a lot of the dads that are coaching, they love coaching their kids through age 12, but they kind of recognize that once their kid becomes a junior high school age and is going to make the move to the regulation field, that the dads probably shouldn't be coaching anymore. And they usually understand that and get it. And their kids and they're ready to turn them over. So there was a bunch of travel teams that kind of all blew up at once, and the talent at that particular tryout was unbelievable. And those kids, 14 of those kids that stayed with the program, was almost every single kid stayed with it for the entire 5 years until they just cycled out just now at 2023s. And 13 of the 14 are going to a 4-year school to play baseball. The other one's going to play locally at junior college here. But we have commits at Cal State Fullerton, UC Irvine, Grand Canyon, UC Santa Barbara, a lot of D1 schools, plus some D2 schools. I mean, we have 3 of our kids are going to go to Westmont in Montecito, which is moved up to D2 this year, and it's a beautiful campus and a great educational experience. And so not everybody's a D1 player, but I think that it's safe to say that any player that's come through our program who wants to play at the next level can do so at some level, at the level that's appropriate for them. They can continue to play baseball and pursue higher education. And I think part of it, I was wondering about this. This isn't unique to our program. I think that these days, the kids that are still playing baseball when they're 17, 18, they've made a commitment to doing that pretty much full time. I mean, there's a few outlier 2-3 sport guys, but by and large, if you're playing baseball when you're 17, 18, you've made the decision a few years earlier that baseball is going to be your year-round sport in Southern California. Yeah. And so you are ready to play, mentally and physically and, and experience-wise, you are ready to continue to play at college if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. So actually what you're saying is you do think that the travel teams now play more of an important role in the recruiting process than high school coaches do now.
Well, high school coaches are still super important, and the ones that have good relationships with college coaches, and that college coaches, they trust their judgment, certainly have a big role. The main difference is the college coaches can't come out and watch high school games very often because they have their own season to play. It's just a conflict. During the summer, the college coaches have time to go out and watch these guys. And there are a couple dead periods. You got to know the rules. The college coaches, they know when they can actually make contact directly with players, when they have to go through, me or Dustin, and I'll get a call from somebody, and after a tournament say, hey, I really like the way so and so pitched or hit or whatever. Can you ask him to call me? And so that's legal. So I'll reach out to the player, talk to him and his parents, kind of go over, what the conversation might be like. And then if that player has, the inclination to make that call, he'll call that college coach. And sometimes that's the way you have to do it, just because of the calendar. But I think the main difference with the travel coaches and the high school coach is really just that the college coaches can come out and watch. And so there's tournaments that we have where you turn around and behind home plate, especially where we play at, like in Arizona at major league spring training sites, we're back at the practice fields. There's 4 practice fields that are all in a group. And a college coach, it's like a 4-ring circus for him. He can just turn and watch 4 games at once and see a bunch of kids. And there's really no substitute for that. There's a facility in Orange County called Great Park. It's very similar to that, where there'll be 4 games going on at once, and college coaches are everywhere there. And that's the main thing. I think if there's another aspect, it's that the way we coach in the summer is a little bit different than the way the high school coaches are coaching. I'm putting players in a position to succeed and to give them the exposure. And we talk about do something that is special. A scouting axiom is, if you see a player do something once, he can do it again. But you've got to do that one thing once. If you get a first pitch fastball, don't take that first pitch cocked fastball. Jump on it, and do something special.
Wow.
Steal third, steal third. Whatever it might be that you do that other guys that's going to stick in that college coach's mind, and he's going to say, this kid can help me win. So that might be a little bit of a difference, is that that is an objective at the front of our mind in the summer, is to put the kids in a position to for college coaches to be able to evaluate them fairly.
Well put. Question about the amateur ranks. Icons like Little League and Pony League. Has travel ball actually hurt them, or is on some level it helped them?
You mean the traditional ponies and little leagues?
Mm-hmm.
That are basically called rec ball now, because the kids play travel ball. So, the way travel ball has evolved, and especially around here, because the premier location to play travel ball tournaments these days is in Camarillo. When I first started doing this, we had to go to like the Big League Dreams parks in Chino and Riverside and Cathedral City to play the best competition. We would have to get on the road. And now the best tournaments for USSSA are right here in Camarillo at Freedom Park and at Kildy. There's two huge locations. So that's a big benefit for the kids around here. And so what it does do, though, there's so many travel teams, the travel baseball has clearly watered down, because a lot of kids want to play, and not every team is an elite team. And some travel coaches, and I disagree with this 100%, but you'll get travel coaches that will forbid their players to play rec ball as well as their travel team. I've always been a proponent of, during the spring, play rec ball. It's just going to get you 2 or 3 more games a week. You're going to get the reps. There's got to be communication between the travel coach and the rec ball coach in terms of arm use, without a doubt. There's got to be communication there, so guys don't overthrow and overpitch. but what's wrong with the additional reps and plus you're playing in rec ball, it's less expensive by and large. It's local. You're driving to a local park and you're playing with friends that you've been friends with since kindergarten, and you're going to be friends with the rest of your life. And there's just nothing wrong with that. So
Yeah.
I'm a proponent of kids sticking with rec ball, even if they're also playing travel ball.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the tough clubs that you've faced over the years, and certainly currently. What are the three toughest travel ball teams that you've ever played in? What was your biggest tournament win?
Oh man, I don't know.
There've been a few.
The GBG program that Michael Garcia Parra put together
Sure.
is really impressive because it's kind of a franchise operation that he's put together, but leveraging the Garcia Parra name, and Michael is really a good coach, and he's a very personable guy, and they've got teams from San Diego all the way up to a lot of kids from Agoura play on a GBG team. And the coach there at the high school, Anthony, has been a GBG coach.
Yeah.
So when you're playing a GBG team, it's usually going to be a good team. I don't want to slight anybody. There's a lot of good programs. The PFA program's always been good. Alpha Prime, and so you'll get the Total Baseball Vipers that Tom Musborn, the Sierra Canyon coach and the longtime Chatsworth High coach, has put together is always formidable, and he runs a really good program. The Legacy program out of Harvard Westlake High School is well run. The kids get a lot of looks from schools, and the coaches are really good. I mean, there's a lot of travel programs that I respect, and we love to play because we know it's just going to be it's going to be what we're set out to do as a travel team, which is to play the most competitive teams possible.
Next
In terms of the best tournament, how about that one
Arizona?
when Casey and Cato played, and we won that tournament in Arizona, that spring national championship thing. That was super fun. If you remember that one.
Yeah, we played teams from Texas and Kansas City, and yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Hell of a win. There was something like 60 something teams.
Yeah, and like we're going to the Arizona, the USA Baseball Arizona National Championships, 17U. We're going there. It's June 19th through 24th. And we play at the Major League Spring Training sites. We play at Camelback and Peoria and Surprise and maybe Goodyear. You're playing good teams every day. It's 110 degrees. It's a real test. It's a test for kids to flourish in that environment. Plus, it's wood bat, and there's a lot of college coaches around, so it's trial by fire in Arizona, and that's a really fun one. We do that every year with the 15s and 16s and 17s.
Yeah, bring your water.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Stephen, what are your thoughts on the portal now? All the college coaches tell us that these kids are so used to jumping from travel team to travel team. They get to college, they don't play. They go from college to college. Is it a good thing, or has it become just like chaos for you guys?
Well, for us, it hasn't done much for us, but yeah, the portal. I actually got familiar with it with UCLA's football program and USD's football program. I covered a lot of UCLA's spring football over the last month, and you got guys coming in that they're graduate students. It's their fifth year. And you got the same thing in baseball, and you've got the same thing in basketball. You got guys that pretty much would have exhausted their eligibility if not for that extra COVID year. So the average age of a college athlete right now has never been higher, because you got a lot of guys and women that are fifth and even sixth year in college, and they still have eligibility because of that COVID year and redshirting. And then they switch, they transfer, and whether it means they want to pursue a master's degree at a different school, or they just want a different change of scenery, you get a lot of it. But USC and UCLA have been the the benefactors of that, quite a bit. And in baseball, it's never been harder right now to make a college roster, because the rosters are backloaded with all these guys that still have eligibility, their fifth or sixth year, and they're not quite pro prospects, so they're not going to go off and sign. But it's for them, it's a great opportunity to make sure that they get their degree. They're there for long enough to do that, maybe even get a graduate degree and keep playing ball. But the average age of a college player now is like 22, 23. And so for those freshmen that are coming in at age 18, it's kind of a daunting thought right now, because you're trying to make a roster that's already loaded up with a lot of older guys.
Yeah.
Stephen, let's move up a little bit here. An umpire's perspective. What do you think about all the rule changes at the major league level right now? I personally don't like the way that they've changed a lot of things, but maybe what you see is a little bit different.
Well, the one that I really love from a sports writer's perspective is the pitch clock. And let me tell you the reason. If I'm in the LA Times, and I was the LA Times Dodgers beat writer for many years under when Jim Tracy and Grady Little and Joe Torre were the manager, and the games last so long. They lasted so long that our print deadline, I would literally have 5 to 10 minutes from the time a game ended to file my story. So I would be writing the story during the game, kind of from the bottom up. It's not the best way to write a story that is going to end up being, thrown on the doorstep of, 800,000 people the next day. And so there's a lot of pressure there. The fact that games are about a half hour less length now, it's like a godsend for sports writers. It's now, instead of 10 minutes, you got 40 minutes, which is an eternity to write a story, believe it or not.
I can see that.
That in and of itself is just from I'm all for shorter games for that very reason. The game started 7, and we've got to file our story by like 10 o'clock, and so if a game goes over 3 hours, it's rough. And now they're 2.5 hours. Boy, that's awesome.
Yeah.
The one thing I got to say too is the rule to start a inning with runner on second. That's a direct product of travel ball. That came from, what they call the California tiebreaker, and there's various ways to do it. But starting an inning with a runner on second is it's just going to shorten the games, and you're going to avoid having so many of those 15, 16 inning games at the big league level that the players. I mean, what was the longest game you were ever in, Rick? Do you remember?
22 innings. We were up in Montreal at the time. It was the longest one-run game in history, and I happened to be the guy that hit the home run to get us rocking and rolling. But
nice.
Yeah, I didn't mind it because I understand your perspective, and that's the one that I developed as a coach, because you get tired of coaching for that darn long. When you're a player, it seems like a lot of fun. But man, oh man, you want to get those games over with. But I absolutely, as a player, loved playing. I didn't care. I would have played 2-3 games a day. It didn't matter. But I know I was with a team that the Minnesota Twins early on that played a 24 inning game. I think that was the longest one that I was involved with. Yeah.
I remember when I was covering the Dodgers, there was a game. I think we might have been in Houston. I'm not exact. I can't remember where, but it was on the road, and the game went about 20 innings. And I looked up the longest games ever, and one of them was, and this might have been the game you're talking about. It was with the Baltimore Orioles, and Eddie Murray was on the team, and Eddie was the Dodger hitting coach at that time. So after the game, I found Eddie in the clubhouse, and I said, "Hey, you remember that game? What do you remember about that 22 inning game?" And he just looked at me. He just said, "I don't want to talk about that game."
Well, Eddie had a way of making you writers feel real good about your job.
Well, this is the part of the show that I love. It's the word association part. And you'll just basically tell us the first thing that comes to your mind when I say these words or phrases or give these ideas. Number one, daddy ball.
Well, yeah, that's when the son of a coach is being favored by his dad, and everybody kind of knows it, and it usually doesn't go well. And I think deep down, the player who's getting a boost from his daddy would rather he wasn't.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. Kids committing before they can drive.
Well, there's certain schools that are notorious for getting commits really early. See, these are verbal commits; they're non-binding. So either the school or the player can can back off the relationship, and it happens over and over and over. So I think that's what you see with, and sometimes, and I think it's primarily big arms. I think when if a kid is 15 and just turning 16 and he's already throwing 85 to 88, you just project he's not going to be throwing any slower 2 years from now. So you want to wrap him up, and you get commits from the big arms even when they're 15. I've
Yeah.
seen it. In fact, we've had a couple of our guys commit that early.
Worst beard in the big leagues. Charlie Blackmon's hillbilly style or Clayton Kershaw's scraggle style.
Yeah, Charlie Blackmon's he does sort of look like, he just kind of crawled in from the street, but he can rake, man. He can really hit, can he? I mean,
Yeah.
I always have wondered how somebody can play the game with a big long beard like that. It just doesn't seem to me like it would seem like it would get in the way.
Yeah.
Did Brandon Marsh? He's with the Phillies now. You remember he was with the Angels? Did he cut that big beard? I think he
I
might
don't think so. It's horrific.
have.
I couldn't find I was trying to remember his name. I would have put him up there in a minute. I just wonder how they eat. I wonder how
Yeah.
their significant others can look at the food and well, okay. Perfect game showcases.
Well, perfect game. They've carved a real niche. It's been a good business. You got to kind of tip your cap to them developing that business the way they have. If there's an objection to perfect game, is that it's a little bit too reliant on radar readings and exits velocity, all the measurables that are the measurables are, for a college coach, it's great. But when you have measurables on 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, you're just putting a little bit of focus on the wrong thing, I think. And a lot of times those numbers really don't mean anything, but the parents, and the players probably, they love to go on that perfect game website, call up their profile, and see where they ranked in the nation with exit velocity when
Right.
they're 13 years old. So I mean, I can see the appeal of it, and it's been a good business model, but I'm not so sure it really means much.
So goes hand in hand. National player rankings.
Yeah, that's kind of the same. I mean, who really
Yeah.
knows? Who
Yeah.
really knows? This is a big country. I mean, and how do you know honestly where you compare it to a kid from, Georgia, or it's just really tough. So it's a crapshoot. It's just like when I was at USA Today, one of our responsibilities was to pick the top 25, baseball teams in the country, and football and basketball, and it got a lot of readership because USA Today is viewed as impartial. We're not. It's not like the LA Times picking a national team. You'd obviously think they would favor the kids from California, just like the Miami Herald would favor kids from Florida. But USA Today was impartial, and the rankings had a purity to them. But you didn't know. You still didn't know. I mean, because that team that's in baseball, that's 23-1, somewhere outside of Philadelphia. How do they honestly stack up to Jay Sarah, or
Yeah.
Harvard Westlake? It's just impossible to say. And take it with a grain of salt, but it's always fun, I guess.
Yeah. Last one. College baseball advisors. You know who they are. We know a couple of them for sure. Fellows who charge pretty hefty sum to hook a kid up with a college.
Well, I guess it depends on how successful they are. There are definitely voices in the amateur landscape that college coaches will listen to, that have had credibility over the years, may have been out at some point. But by and large, I do think a lot of money's wasted. I think if you're a parent and your son is sort of on the bubble, and and he loves the game and he desperately wants to play at the next level, and as a parent, what can you do? How can you help him? Well, one thing you can always do is write a check, and that may be all you can do at a certain point. And I think that's sometimes what this boils down to. The parent is able to write a check, and for better or worse, you just kind of hope that service does some good for the kid.
Rick, final thoughts?
Well, I've got to go back because I know that Steve touched on some things that I was thinking about when I was coming out of high school at 17 years old. I graduated at 17. And it just seemed like my whole life that I was focused on not going to college and that I wanted to play professional baseball. And I couldn't play my first 2 years of high school even because I didn't have a driver's license. So I couldn't get home after practice because my brother was a track guy. And so I went out for track with him. But as my junior and senior year came along and I finally got my driver's license, I just couldn't play enough baseball. And you said something a little while ago, Steve, about a guy who's playing these travel teams, and he gets up there to bat and he takes that first fastball right down the middle of the plate. And I never, ever did that. I was one of those kind of guys who thought I need to learn to expand my strike zone. If it's away on the outside corner, you've got to hit it the opposite way. If it's in on your hand, still try to hit it up the middle. And that's where I developed as a hitter, because that's why they signed me, because in semi-pro ball, which is our travel team, like you guys have all over the coast here, that was my travel team with Jesse Flores and the Minnesota Twins. And I just was there every single time they had a game, no matter where it was, all over Los Angeles. And I know the young kids that are kind of looking for what's going to get me to the big league, what's going to get me to a major college, is don't be afraid to expand that strike zone. If you can hit a ball, hit it where it's pitched and drive it and learn to be a better hitter. Nowadays, and I want to know your thoughts on this, nowadays they want these kids to drop their hands and uppercut on everything. And I think that's absolutely the wrong way to teach baseball, especially going into the professionals. What are your thoughts about that, Steve?
Well, amen. As an umpire, sometimes you'll see a kid take a pitch and you're just thinking, give me a bat, please. It just like, how could you take that pitch? So yes, especially early in the count, looking fastball, get that fastball, jump on it and drive the ball. It might be the best pitch you get all day. Why take it?
Oh, absolutely.
But and just thinking back to your situation, I mean, back then there were a lot more minor league teams, and you could come up through the minor leagues, and there was more than just 3 or 4 teams per organization. With the redaction of all those minor league teams a year or two ago, I think it's made college baseball almost just a minor league of its own. And if you're going to get an education, I think it's a good way to go. Clearly, if a player, as you're signing, where you slot in the draft is a chance for you to cash in one time on your amateur value. And that's your signing bonus. And then you're going to be paid horribly throughout the minors. And it's not until you make the major leagues, if you do, that you're going to be paid, your value is going to be compensated again. But that one opportunity of a signing bonus is an opportunity to cash in on your value. And if that makes the most sense for a given player at a given time, then more power to them. Jump on it and sign.
Well,
do they have semi-professional games still around? I've totally lost contact with it.
Well, I mean, there's just fewer rookie league teams, the low minors.
Yeah.
Even the local, the one of the closest teams we had, the Lancaster Jethawks, the famed Jethawks, they no longer exist. It's just there's just fewer teams, and you also find, because there's more money involved with signing bonuses, I think you see more college players drafted because it's a safer way to go to draft a 21-year-old than to draft a 17-year-old out of high school, especially an arm. The high school arms, you're finding fewer and fewer of them because it's such a crapshoot to draft even a guy with a golden arm. 2 years later he has Tommy John, and next thing you know, he's 23, 24 anyway before he makes the big leagues. And so college players there's an appeal to that.
Well, I'll say this, that there are scouts out there that literally call colleges on the behalf of players to keep them in state if they're the regional scout. I know something that just happened currently, so it didn't surprise me, but it just goes to show you where the situation is right now, and that's it. They're using the college ranks as minor leagues on some level, because you could sign as many guys as you want, you just don't draft all that many. So
right, yeah.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for joining us, but before we go, I want to salute a website. It's the website that we are served on, so to speak, and that would be twoadays.com. It's the only college coach rating and review site, the only site of its kind. It's actually invaluable to a player who's looking to get on the next level. You want to see a little bit something about either the school that you're going to attend and the people that are going to be coaching you, and it's certainly all there to be found. It's twoadays.com. It'll make your life a lot easier, and the most expensive decision of your life, going to college, a smarter one. Steve, again, thank you very much for joining us. Steve Henson, co-founder of BCBA and all-around great baseball guy. A pleasure having you on, and I'll see you on Sunday. From all of us on the Prospect Blueprint to all of you, have a good evening.